So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Matchfit Football Podcast. I'm Darren Potts, your host here again this week on the show. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest. It is Daniel Ballard. He is a Northern Ireland international, currently playing for Millwall. Daniel, warm welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Delighted to get you here. And obviously, you're a very busy man. You're a man in demand, of course. But talk to me about how you're feeling so far, how the season's going for you, how you feel everything is kind of going in 2022 for you at the minute.
Yeah, I think on a whole, obviously last year was probably my most successful year as a player, and joining Millwall this season at the start, it was going extremely well, and I couldn't have been at a better club, and I was playing every week and learning so much from different people. And obviously I've had this injury I had to go through, which was come at a frustrating time. I was just getting a good run of games under my belt and was feeling confident, feeling good, and then obviously this happened. So, but I mean, it's part of football, and I've had an injury like this before, so it was it was frustrating. But I'm just coming back now. I got my first minutes on the weekend after 3 months, so hopefully we can get it back on track.
What's it like coming back, from an injury and getting those first minutes under your belt? I always feel like when a player's out for a long time, it also must be like almost going through pre-season again and then getting back onto the field. What's it like for you in that scenario?
Yeah, I think when I had the injury, long-term injury before, it sort of wasn't during the season. It was during sort of the COVID time, and I had a lot more time to recover and get myself right again. Whereas this time it's been completely different. There's almost been a bit of a clock. I've wanted there's games sort of passing by, as the weeks go. So it's I wanted to get back as quickly as possible. And yeah, it's tough because you want to go back into games feeling as sharp and feeling as fit as possible, but at the end of the day, you can't wait too long, and you maybe don't get the luxury of having like a full pre-season almost under your belt before you go back in. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of stuff to do to get back so you're able to play. And I've got a really good medical team at Arsenal and Millwall, so they're not stupid. They've made me. I've had to play minutes with the young teams, had to do a lot of running, so that I am ready. And now I feel like I'm sort of ready to get my first 90 minutes, hopefully.
Something you mentioned there, with the Arsenal medical team and then Millwall, because you're out on loan at Millwall, whenever you go through an injury, do you have to be assessed by both medical teams, or are Arsenal sort of kept in the loop of what's going on? How does it work for a professional when you're, on loan away from your parent club?
Yeah, so it was quite a long-term injury. So I actually went and done my rehab back at Arsenal, which was pretty much the club's decision. I'm their player. They wanted to, make sure everything was okay. And I think for them, it sort of takes the pressure off. Millwall wouldn't do this. I know they're good people, but I think Arsenal might be worried that if you're in that environment where they might want you back as quick as possible, things might be rushed and things might not be done properly. So I think by doing that, it sort of takes all that pressure away, and they just want to make sure that I'm rehabbed correctly. And when I was ready to go, they sent me back to Millwall.
It's interesting insight to hear that. And we've mentioned Arsenal there, and going back to Arsenal doing your rehab. Tell me about your time at Arsenal and coming up through the youth system, and playing at the club. I believe you would have been playing under Freddie Ljungberg for a period of time, Arsenal legend, sharing a changing room with Saka and Emile Smith Rowe and whatnot. Give us a little bit of insight into your time playing for Arsenal.
Yeah, I mean, I joined Arsenal when I was 8 years old, so it's sort of all I've knew growing up. I've been quite fortunate to join, an academy at such a young age, and I've had some really good coaches throughout my time, and probably the best training someone could get. So I'm sort of very fortunate, and as you say, I've been extremely lucky, been able to play with some of, you know, the best players in the Premier League now, and yeah, like Saka and Smith Rowe, they're some of the standouts growing up, and it's amazing to see how well they're doing now. It's inspiring for the rest of us who may have different paths and who have had to go out alone. It's nice to see that they're going through and shining right at the top.
And obviously, one of the major parts of your career at Arsenal, whenever you're sort of on the fringes of that first team and beginning to go out on loan and whatnot, Unai Emery is the manager in charge, then Mikel Arteta comes in. For you as a young player and, coming up through the system and being in that first team environment, is that something that you get excited about, or is that hard to take, or do you go, where's my future at? What's going on when a new manager comes in, and what did Arteta do when he sort of arrived at the club?
Yeah, I think I try not to pay too much attention to that. I've never been, a pivotal player at Arsenal almost. I've always been with the under 18s, with the under 23s, and then I've been pretty much straight out on loan. So I've tried to focus on, myself, and, when I'm out on loan, I try to sort of immerse myself in that club and, focus on everything I can do, with the club I'm at, whether it's Blackpool or now Millwall. So I think now maybe I've had a few years out on loan. There might be decisions at the club where I might be more involved with the first team, but essentially it's sort of out of your control. All I can do is go and put in performances on a Saturday and on a Tuesday, and hopefully get their attention. And if I'm going to get an opportunity there, I'm going to have to play well where I'm at here.
Well, certainly, you've been drawn the plaudits when you've been out on loan. You've drew the attention of the Northern Ireland manager. He obviously knew you from the 21s and whatnot. You've made your full international, debut. You've become an integral part of the Northern Ireland first team, which I think is phenomenal at your age as well. I think also, even looking at it too, you went out to Blackpool on loan and you were playing, in League One, and now you're playing in the Championship with Millwall. You've made the step up even in your club career just inside a calendar year. What's the difference between, being at Arsenal in the academy and coming up through the academy and then going out and playing first team football, both at Blackpool and at Millwall?
Yeah, I think coming up through the academy, especially the under 18s and 23s, I found it really, really useful. I think I always found it extremely difficult. I found the level was good when I was playing there. It felt super competitive, and from a maturity level, my body wasn't fully developed yet, to go and play men's football. And I just watched the Rooney documentary, and you see how young he was when, he made his debut in the Premier League. He was 16 or 17, and he had a man's body and was sort of ready for that. Whereas if I look back now, I wouldn't have been nowhere near that, just through sort of genetics. So, it was a really good time to sort of build the foundations, and then when I was ready to go, the step up is massive. And you go from playing other kids, other young athletes, to people playing in front of real fans, real managers, players that are fighting for their lives, for their families. It's a massive step. The big thing was, the importance of each game and the result. Because if you go from an academy, it's more about development and it's more about yourself. Whereas you go into, the league, it's about winning, and that's all that matters.
Is that a hard transition to make, in your head, especially at the very, very start, mentally, when you first make that transition, make your first couple of appearances and start to get used to things? Is that something that maybe not, wouldn't say you struggle with, but is that something you have to adjust to?
Yeah, I think the main thing is probably the added pressure from, the manager, your teammates, the fans. It doesn't really exist in under 23s. Um, Not through like no fault of their own. There's just not really anything to play for almost, and yeah, it is a little bit of a shock. But a lot of people will tell you when they go out on loan, presuming it's a good experience, that they love it, and the step from academy to real men's football is brilliant because it's everything you've experienced like times 10, and it's the winning feeling where it really matters, and when you've all dug deep together, there's no better feelings playing in front of fans. And yeah, it was a little bit of a shock, but it's like an enjoyable one.
Tell me about the changing room experience, when you go out on loan from Arsenal, to both Blackpool and Millwall. Is there experienced players in there that are able, to lead by example or able to give a little bit of guidance? You mentioned that in the Arsenal 23s, it's a lot about development. Whereas maybe at Blackpool and maybe at Millwall, there's experienced pros who are more demanding perhaps of you as a player. What's that changing room atmosphere and team ethos like?
Yeah, I think I've been quite lucky. I've been involved in 2 changing rooms that were like so influential to me, and I've been involved with really good people and people that want to help me, and successful people in the game who know how to win games and know how to build that team morale and know how to guide you through sort of rocky periods. And obviously going into men's football, I wasn't having 10 out of 10s every week. And sometimes it's just the players coming over and, taking that bit of pressure off you and telling you you're an amazing player and you're one of the best players in this team. You're going to help us, you're going to help us win games, after having a bad game. And it's little things like that that really, really sort of helped me. And I've had a lot of experienced pros and even the young players around me. It's I've just been really lucky having two really good dressing rooms.
I mean, 2 really good dressing rooms as well. It was with Neil Critchley at Blackpool and Gary Wright now at Millwall. 2 players in their own right, 2 managers in their own right that have been there. They've done it. They've had a great careers as well. And it's obviously been able to rub off in the changing room. That's rubbed off on you. And that's kind of what, from a supporter viewpoint looking out from the outside looking in, that's kind of what you want to know and what you want to hear, that about a good changing room and a good atmosphere. Talk to me about the importance of maybe having a role model in either your team or your life. Do you have one? You don't have to name who that person is, but is that important to you?
I wouldn't necessarily say I have sort of one person I look up to or one person that guides me through everything. I'd say in the academy, I had a lot of maybe 3 or 4 really good coaches. Freddie Lundberg is one of them. Kwame Ampadu, Steve Bold. I mean, I've had some really good, pivotal characters, at important times during my career who've really helped me, and they sort of helped me during when I was in the academy, and then going into men's football. Of course, Neil Critchley, Gary Rowworth had massive roles to play, but I think the most important people I've found in the last 2 years has been my teammates. And you can listen to other people, you understand what they're saying, you take it all in, but when it comes from a teammate who's experiencing the same thing you are, who's going through it as you are now or has just finished, I don't know, it hits home a bit more and you really understand them and they understand you. So I think that they've been the most sort of pivotal ones for me.
It's phenomenal to hear that, about teammates and people you can rely on or people who have been there and done it, and you're maybe even going through the same thing together if it's another young player, and you'll be able to understand what each other are going through. And I think that's vital, obviously, to continued progression. And we're going to talk a little bit about what I call Matchfit performance. And one of the questions I'd love to ask all my guests are, in your opinion, what are the keys to elite performance?
I would say finding a balance between just finding a balance in life between, performance, that hard work, and switching off, putting other things in your life so that you can switch off from football, so that you're busy, you're not overthinking. Um, and that's something I've been trying to implement the last few years, is try to find that good balance between hard work, dedication, and switching off and having other interests and working on them other interests and being passionate about something else, alongside, for my case, football.
Is that important for you to have something else that you can go and do just to take your mind off football, whether you've had a great day, a bad day, or an okay day?
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. That's for, on a personal level, that I've tried to do in the last 3, 4, 5 years. And when I find that thing that I'm passionate about at the time, it's there's no better feeling than going, switching off, enjoying something else, after putting in a hard day's work, or having a good performance or a bad performance. Um, and yeah, just trying to do that while things are going really well, because there's going to be times like injury or bad performances where it won't go well, and you need to fall back on that.
Yeah, absolutely agree with those sentiments. One of the things that you've said, in there is having something to fall back on, take your mind off something. But take me back to a young Daniel Ballard. Take me back to when you were a kid. Where did the love of football start? And how did you get into the world of professional football? Was it jumpers for goalposts? Was it academy? Where did your love for the game kind of stem from? And did you envisage yourself having a career out of football?
As a kid, I hated losing. I couldn't deal with losing. Like, I just couldn't understand it. I'd like tantrums everywhere. Yeah, just something like didn't like click with me, and it was quite embarrassing for myself and for others, because I couldn't lose at anything. And football was just a sport I played, Sunday league team, primary school, at lunch times. It was just, I could not lose. And I think that's where I love being a defender, because it wasn't even the fact that I love winning. I just could not lose. I couldn't take it. So I felt like if I could stop people scoring, then at least I wouldn't lose. And I think that's been one of my biggest sort of attributes playing football, growing up, is that effort and the determination not to lose, and to give everything. And I think that's given me the edge, a lot of the time. But yeah, I mean, as a kid, I never really imagined playing professionally, even as I was going through the academy. Probably up to when I was 16 years old, I still couldn't really imagine myself playing professionally. But it's something I obviously love, and I couldn't really picture myself doing anything else now.
It's absolutely brilliant to hear that, when you're thinking back to young Daniel Ballard just screaming at people if you're getting beat, or just going home and smashing the PlayStation controller down if you lost a game of football and all that. But I think that grows in, and as part of your development, into that will to win and that will not to lose. And it helps frame you for, obviously, the career and the trajectory that you're on now. And another big thing I find for you, and we'll touch on the Northern Ireland scene now, is coming up through that, you played under Ian Barraclough at the 21s, and you made your debut against Spain for the 21s, and you've obviously went on to play in the first team. What was it like getting the international call up, and what's it like working under Ian Barraclough?
Yeah, so I actually was lucky enough to first of all get called up to a few of the squads with Michael O'Neill, and they were at quite pivotal times. I'd never played professional football before. I was still with the academy. So that, give me the real taste of, what football's like, and what a change room's like on a match day, and, what it's like being even on the bench or in the stand with a full stadium. And I think that was really important. And I used to really enjoy them trips, even though I was going just to train and just to help out almost. It sort of gave me that introduction. And then when obviously the gaffer now took over, it's sort of the mentality switched. He'd sort of seen me play under 21s, and he threw me into that game against Romania. I'd had a year out from a knee operation and hadn't played 90 minutes for it was over a year. And he just had a real belief in me, and probably at a time where I didn't have it in myself. And it was strange, having someone sort of believe in you and give you that confidence. And he gave me that, and I'd like to say I've sort of repaid him with at the start some good performances. And I can't thank him enough for giving me them opportunities. And just having that one person believe in you and give you that opportunity, it's such a confidence booster.
I think one of the things too is probably at the age you were at that time, and coming off the big injury and coming back in and feeling that confidence and feeling that belief from a manager to put that faith in you, it almost helps you in terms of your career, because it could be quite easy to kind of get lost in the shuffle at that stage, with the injury, come back with feeling frustrated and not playing. How important was not only just that match, but is maybe even make it a bigger question, how important is the confidence in a manager for a player?
Yeah, I think it's massive, and that's again such an important time. And I was looking for a loan at the time, and no clubs to see me play. No one wanted to, no one was putting the trust in me. No one wanted to give me that opportunity. And for him to start me in that game and tell me he believes in me and tell me that I want to play you because you've done well, you've played well with the 21s, you've earned this chance. And having that confidence, especially from a manager, is massive.
I think one of the major standouts for you is, it's probably a day that we all want to forget because of the scoreline, but obviously the game, at Windsor Park, you were playing against one of the best strikers in the world, Erling Haaland, and, the scoreline we want to forget, but you certainly got a lot of plaudits that day. I think Sky Sports rated you 9 out of 10 that match, and there was a couple of other match reports that I read that gave you a phenomenal match report that day. Obviously, we didn't get the win, but in terms of playing against someone like Haaland for 90 minutes and everything that went on there, how big of a learning curve or how big of a moment do you think in terms of your career will that game be in terms of the learning experience of it?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I took away from playing against him personally was his attitude towards that game. And it could have been easy for one of the best players in the world playing against Northern Ireland in an empty stadium during coronavirus to take your foot off the gas almost and just give it an 80% or something in a game. And I was walking out of that tunnel, and I see him looking straight into all of our eyes, and from that moment on, I knew he's serious. He's gonna go out there and fight and battle. And I'd like to say I always give that sort of determination back, but it was nice to see players right at the top, giving their all for their countries. And that was something. It was almost like a reminder that you've achieved nothing. This guy's achieved so much, and he's still giving all of that. So it was almost like a reminder of no matter how well you've done in the past, or you can't take your foot off the gas, and you've got to go and give everything if you want to get right to the top.
Absolutely. And I think the point you made there about he could have, almost said it's Northern Ireland, it's an empty stadium. I'm just going to go out and go through the motions. But he came out and he was going 100%, giving everything that he had. And I think that's such a great learning experience for young players or young fans who are watching the game who want to go pro. This guy is not taking anything for granted. He's given it 100% every single time, as you said, you did as well. And I think that's amazing. We've talked about slightly, the difference between, in the Arsenal Academy and then going out and loan to Blackpool and Millwall. What was the difference like, and what was the atmosphere like between going from the 21s to the full international side?
I think obviously at the time, I'd never even played under 23s football before making the jump to under 21s international. So at the time, it felt massive for me, and to play against Spain, who were, a lot of first team international or first team at their club levels, and it was, that was a massive jump at the time. Not realizing at the time it's going to be an even bigger jump when you go on to the full international. And yeah, it was, leading up to these big games, something that I've always struggled with, or not struggled with. I feel the pressure a lot. I tend to get nervous. I usually play better when I'm more nervous and when I'm under pressure. So I think, although it might not feel particularly nice at the time, you're worried, you're anxious, it seems like, a bit overwhelming almost. I think that's when I've typically seemed to have done quite well. So it's encouraging, going forward when, I'm sure there'll be bigger games I'll have to play in that, I can sort of get through them and embrace them, enjoy them.
Yeah, I mean, the nerves thing's an interesting one because every player reacts differently, and every player and every person has their own characteristics. And there are certain people who say they never feel nerves and they go out and they play, and that's fine. There are other people who like you said, you get nerves, but you feel you thrive and you play better under those nerves. You almost feel the weight of the expectation and then embrace it, which is interesting in itself. Was that always the case for you, or was that something that you developed once you maybe went out on loan and were playing men's football in front of fans and playing the international football in front of fans? Or have you always felt the pressure of just, it's a football match and I want to win, so here's the pressure and here's the nerves?
I think it's almost sort of reverse, as you said. I think as a kid, I always felt it a lot more. Under 13s, 14s, 15s. I remember playing against Chelsea, who was our biggest sort of rivals at the time, and I couldn't sleep. I'd feel sick. It was like the worst. We used to play them like 3 times a year, and it was like the worst day of the year, like every single time. And when I stepped up, going to Blackpool and started playing, I felt like it would completely reverse. I wasn't getting nervous for games anymore, probably because there was no fans. And you get into that rhythm, you feel comfortable, you're playing well. So I was almost trying to make myself get nervous because I feel like I still do play better like that. I feel maybe more alert, more focused. So yeah, I feel at times I feel like I need to add some nerves because when you're playing regularly and you're playing twice a week, it's hard to really psych yourself up for games. You play 90 minutes and 2 days later you're having to do it again on a Tuesday night. So it's interesting. And obviously I come back on the weekend. I had to come on 1-0 up in the 60th minute at home to Sheffield United, and it was a full stadium and they had packed out the away end, and suddenly I was extremely nervous again. So I think it fluctuates from game to game, and I've had this time out and I wasn't sure am I fit enough, am I sharp enough, what if I come on and we could see it's all gonna be my fault. So it was, luckily I got through it okay. But yeah, that's something you always got to manage, I suppose.
It's that interesting pressure, isn't it? If you're 1-0 up and a striker's coming on, the striker's rubbing their hands and saying happy days and might go on and score a goal and make a 2-0. If defender comes on, it's like we're 1-0 up, we can't lose this. And then that pressure that comes with that. Also on the Northern Ireland scene, we've players like Craig Cathcart and Johnny Evans who, similarly to yourself, they started out at a big club. They started out at Manchester United, and before playing for Manchester United, they both went out on loan. They went to Royal Antwerp and then Sunderland, and then obviously Craig Cathcart, similarly to yourself, ended up playing at Blackpool for a bit on loan. Is that something? Obviously, I'm not saying you're similar to them or your trajectory is the same as them, but is that something that you feel can help you, coming through at a big club, going out on loan and playing football, competitive men's football somewhere else to increase your game time, add tools to your chest, things like that? Is that something that you feel can add to your game?
Yeah, 100%. And every player has a different pathway, and I think it's very rare nowadays that, especially a centre back, will come up through the academy and go straight into a top 6 Premier League team. I don't think that's very realistic. So, everyone's got different pathways, and from the minute they said, we'd like you to go on loan, I was well up for it, and I couldn't wait to go. Almost, I wanted to sort of immerse myself in the experience in playing games in the Football League. I love playing football. I don't take too well to sitting on the bench or not pushing myself. I get frustrated quite easily, and so to go out and to be able to play games, there's no better feelings. So I'm more than happy doing this, and it's not easy. Just because you have the label of Arsenal on your head, it doesn't make you no better than the hundreds of other professionals in the league below, and the hundreds of other professionals who are at Premier League teams just below you. It's a fight for everyone, and there's only so many spots on a Saturday that can be filled. So, just because you have this label, if you're not putting the work in, if you're not performing, a manager in a championship just isn't going to pick you. There's plenty of other options for them.
It's something I've never really talked about before, so it's interesting you brought that up, the competitive nature of football in general, just between players at clubs or players coming up through the developmental system that all want to play, that all want to be a starter, that all want to get first team football somewhere. Is that something that is hard to deal with, or is that something that just comes with the territory of being a professional player?
I mean, it's not, of course, it's not ideal. You want to play the same as everyone else. Everyone wants to play every minute of every game, and it's such a so many things can go on. And like right now, coming back from a long-term injury, just because I'm now fit doesn't mean I'm going back into the team. There's been other players playing in my position who've been playing extremely well. And it's frustrating because, you want to go out there and perform, and you want to go out there and do well for the team and for yourself. But why should I get that opportunity when someone who's playing week in, week out already getting good performances, why is the gaffer going to take him out? So it's sometimes you've got to be patient, which is really tough. And, injuries do happen in football, and, suspensions, and you just got to, mentally keep yourself ready for that opportunity. And that can be tough at times because when you're not playing, it is really demotivating, and all you want to do is be out there, and you might be traveling in the country, sitting on the bench. Can be quite demotivating, but that's your job to keep yourself ready, to keep yourself prepared, and you will get that opportunity eventually. And when you get it, it's down to you to take it.
I mean, speaking of that, that difficulty and keep yourself prepared, a lot of that'll probably come into the mindset, and tell me, as for you specifically, but also as a professional footballer, the importance of having a strong mindset and being mentally tough.
It's massive because, it's not football isn't, your regular job. It's nothing's guaranteed, nothing's certain. And as I say, there's so many people fighting for such a limited amount of opportunity. If someone is more mentally tough than you, or is willing to put a bit more work in, and is willing to, play through pain and play in high pressure games that might not seem nice at the time, they're always going to get the opportunities, and they'll take them. So, if you're not mentally prepared to go through all of that, you'll get left by the wayside. And unfortunately, that's like just the nature of football.
Yeah, I think that mental side of the game, it's one of the things that's maybe not talked about enough, is the mental toughness and the desire that it takes, to constantly push yourself, because it can be demoralizing if you believe you're playing well, training well, doing everything right, and you're not getting the game time. But it's that consistency of application and consistency of pushing yourself and preparing yourself and being at the top of your game for when that opportunity comes. And for you, a big moment in your career, as we talked about, was the game against Romania when that opportunity came. And you grabbed it with both hands, and your career has obviously continued to flourish since that. You've mentioned briefly in passing, you've had a couple of major injuries in your career so far. Is there anything that you do different now as a result of those injuries? Maybe injury prevention, foam rollers, saunas, ice baths, anything that you have started to do or of that's helped you out in that area?
Yeah, so I'd like to say I was doing it to an extent before anyway. And sometimes, a bad tackle, you land the wrong way. It's like inevitable, as sometimes you just can't help it. You will get an injury. But I think this one especially has been a real eye-opener in terms of, I was really enjoying my football. I was really enjoying everything. And to get it taken away like that, it's put that extra emphasis on what can I do to prevent that. So, I have just like a pre-activation routine, like an individual one specifically for my knee that I've just rehabbed, and I do that before every training session and every game. And then I think the important thing, especially playing twice a week at time, is your recovery between games and sleep, and using the recovery pumps, going in the pool. I like to prioritize that a lot more than I did before. Now, knowing the feeling of getting injured, having that time away, although at times it might be a bit of a ball ache, or you'd rather not. It's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, injuries are just one of those things that happen in football, and it's almost like the comeback and the prevention and the things that you can do to help make your career go longer, to help prolong your career, to help keep you fit and keep you ready. One of the other questions I like to always ask every single guest that comes on the show is, if you have any piece of advice you could give to any young player or any young person wanting to go into the world of professional football, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would just say, especially for like the younger audience, just don't take it too seriously, and really try to keep that love for the game, and just really enjoy playing football, and try not to feel the pressures, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to become or to be the best player every week. Just go and really enjoy playing football, because I think that's one thing I might regret growing up as a kid, is joining an academy so soon. It sort of takes that pure sort of love for the game out of it at such a young age.
It's interesting, the academy, where it becomes very serious, very developmental, very, very quickly, I'm assuming, versus that, like I joked around earlier with jumpers for goalposts, but that love for the game. And it's kind of combining those two. And I think that's a phenomenal insight into, your own mental space and your own, advice for young people and young players. Last question for you before we begin to wrap this up. Do you set goals for yourself? And if so, what are your goals, both short-term and long-term?
I don't necessarily set goals. I think I had one goal this season was to play 30 games for Millwall. But I tend not to set goals just because of the nature of, again, football. And I'd say I'd maybe set very short-term goals, but long-term I try not to, because I feel like it's so unpredictable. Although I do know goal setting is a good tool for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for your time today. This has been the Matchfit Football Podcast. Where can people connect with you online if they want to continue to follow your journey?
You just follow my Instagram. It's DG Ballard.
Well, thanks very much, Daniel, for your time today. Wish you well in the rest of the season. And obviously, anytime you pull on the Northern Ireland jersey, we'll be cheering you on for that as well. So listen, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck for the rest of the campaign. And hopefully we'll be speaking to you again very, very soon.
Thank you very much.